are a group of people who just want to protest nonviolently, and then Antifa shows up and gets violent with them. Okay, World War II allies fighting Hitler's soldiers were not fighting protesters. They were fighting armed men with guns. That's why we sent tanks and howitzers to fight them. We don't send tanks and howitzers to rallies of neo-Nazis. Okay, the ACLU defended Nazis marching in Skokie. We didn't send guys with guns. The alt-right isn't an army. Okay, they're evil. They believe in evil things. The minute they get violent, they should be arrested and they should be put down. But the idea that you can meet nonviolent protest, even of people that you hate, with violence, is really dangerous. It's really dangerous stuff. And so when Trump says this stuff, when Trump says that Antifa attacked the alt-right and that there's evidence of that, he's correct. That is true. Okay, that's true. So that's what he said that I think was true. In a second, I'm going to get to more of what he said about the statue.
I watched those very closely, much more closely than you people watched it. And you have you had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent. And nobody wants to say that, but I'll say it right now. You had a group on the other side that came charging in without a permit, and they were very, very violent.
Okay, so the fact that Trump put so much focus on what he called the alt-left here, and I assume he means Antifa, when he talks about them, had the left up in arms, they're saying, why aren't you focusing more on the white supremacist rally and the fact that a white supremacist actually was responsible for murder, rammed a car into 20 people at that particular rally on Saturday? Why are you focusing so much on the alt-left? I think that it is perfectly appropriate for the President of the United States to talk about the violence of Antifa, which has been violent in Seattle. They were violent in Seattle again yesterday. Violent in Berkeley. Violent in Sacramento. Violent in Richmond. Violent yesterday. Okay, so this is tape from yesterday. This is still in Charlottesville. They're at the courthouse. And here's Antifa getting into it with the police.
Stop resisting! Stop resisting!
Okay, so Antifa has been violent and consistently violent for a long time now, and what I'm seeing from the left is an attempt by the left to pretend that Antifa are the great heroes of this story, that Antifa are standing up to tyranny, that Antifa are standing up to the alt-right, and therefore that Antifa is somehow a good force, that something good is happening with Antifa. And you're seeing this from the left almost universally this morning. It's a huge mistake by the left, okay? So here's just a couple examples. Mitt Romney, right, who's not on the left, but Mitt Romney tweeted this out this morning or last night. He tweeted, "No, not the same. One side is racist, bigoted Nazi. The other opposes racism and bigotry. Morally different universes." Okay, again, it is true that some of the protesters who were there to protest the white supremacists were there and are in completely morally different universes. But Antifa is not in a completely morally different universe. Antifa is a violent communist anarchist group that's been making violent trouble all around the country. And then you had members of the press who are mimicking this talking point. John Hendrickson is a writer at Esquire. Here's what he tweeted this morning. He tweeted, "Alt-left thugs who battled Nazis," right? And it's a picture of a bunch of World War II vets. Hey, those were not alt-left thugs. Those were American soldiers who were fighting armed Nazis who were engaged in violence and the takeover of a sovereign nation. I assume that if the alt-right white supremacist neo-Nazis had actually, in armed fashion, taken over Charlottesville, that we'd have sent the armed forces, not Antifa. Okay, the alt-left is much more akin to, as I said yesterday, the red mobs who were fighting the brown shirts in 1932 Germany and actually led to the increase in the vote share for Hitler's Nazi party, because people got sick of watching the Reds fight the Browns and they sided with the Browns over the Reds. But he's not the only one making this comparison. Jeffrey Goldberg at The Atlantic, he tweets out, "Watching Save It Private Ryan, a movie about a group of very aggressive alt-left protesters invading a beach without a permit." Well, no, that's idiotic. It's about a group of American soldiers who are invading sovereign French territory in order to oust the Nazis, who are an actual fighting force. Okay, not the same thing. To compare people who are not behaving violently in Charlottesville to people who are behaving violently on the beaches of France, and to compare people who are American soldiers to alt-left protesters, who, by the way, would never join the American army in 1,000 years. To compare those people is just asinine. It's morally asinine. But you saw this. This became a meme over the evening. Brian Fallon is a Hillary Clinton spokesperson, and here's what he tweeted. He said, "Also confronted the Nazis without a permit," and it's a picture of the guys from World War II wading onto Normandy Beach. Insane. Okay, same routine from Chris Cuomo, who's an anchor over at CNN. Anti-fascist disrupting a large gathering of white supremacists. And then it says, "Let's not forget." That's what Chris Cuomo wrote. And it's not just the sort of idiots in the movement. Mark Bray is a historian. Here's what he wrote in the pages of the Washington Post today. Quote, And this is, again, defending Antifa. The vast majority of anti-fascist organizing is nonviolent, but their willingness to physically defend themselves and others from white supremacist violence and preemptively shut down fascist organizing efforts before they turn deadly distinguishes them from liberal anti-racists. Anti-fascists argue that after the horrors of chattel slavery and the Holocaust, physical violence against white supremacists is both ethically justifiable and strategically effective. The history of anti-fascist demands that we take seriously the violence of white supremacists. The days of just ignoring them are over. And he says European anti-fascists fought Hitler, and they fought Stalin, and they fought, well, he didn't say they fought Stalin, actually, because that would be factually incorrect. They fought Mussolini. He says they fought Franco. There's only one problem with that. The anti-fascist forces who fought Hitler and Franco and Mussolini, they all lost. Okay, and one of the reasons they all lost is because they actually made those movements more popular. By going out there and engaging in street fights in Weimar in 1930, 31, 32, 230 people were killed in street clashes between the brown shirts and the reds in 1932. That led to the rise of the brown shirts. It led to that people wanted a restoration of order. So backing the so-called Antifa groups is really bad. Okay, it's really bad. Antifa's tactics actually help the alt-right because it makes people see the alt-right as victims. And I first want to bring on friend of the program, obviously best-selling author, the creator of some of the most successful documentaries in American history, author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Hillary's America, and now author of the brand new book, The Big Lie, Exposing the Nazi Roots of the American Left, Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh, thanks so much for joining the show. Appreciate it.
Hey, Ben. It's a pleasure. Good to be on the show.
So I just want to jump right into the book because I think that there's a lot of material in there that's vital for people to know. The left is constantly suggesting that folks on the right are Nazis, and we've seen them use this as an excuse for punching people. We've seen them use this as an excuse for opposing politicians they don't like. But essentially, you make the contention in your book, The Big Lie, Exposing the Nazi Roots of the American Left, that the American left is significantly more tied to Nazism, to National Socialism, than the American right. So what's the basic case for that?
Well, I'm making a contemporary case that is sitting on top of a historical case. And the contemporary case is very simple, that fascism at its core is the ideology of the centralized state.